the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. I'd like to continue with the full Kaddish on page 279.
Okay, so once again, I'm going to unmute people. And again, it's very important to remain as quiet as you can, except for when you're responding. And again, I'll ask Lois just to not to rush from piece to piece. Okay. Yeah. What's the page again? I'm sorry, I can't find it.
279.
279. Great, thank you. Okay.
Amen.
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 Yama divrachim tevim michalchutei. B'chol chol v'yom echon v'chai d'chol v'Yisrael. V'agalav izman kurivim aru.
Amen.
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 Yeshmei Rabba Mevarach. V'yalamu me'almaya yitbarach.
Barak Yishtabach V'Torah V'Kermon V'Taseh V'Tadar V'Taleh V'Talol Shemei Kudusho
Richu.
Le'ela Min Kol V'Chata V'Shechata V'Shechata V'Nechemata V'Amiram Dilma V'Yimaru.
Amen.
Amen.
V'Kama Salot Tehonu V'Tehonu V'Yisrael V'Damot Tehonu Yishmael V'Yimaru.
Amen.
V'Hei Shalom Arav V'Yisrael V'Chayim Aleinu V'Yalchol Yisrael V'Yimaru.
Amen.
Amen.
Useh Shalom B'Yomah Hu Yaseh Shalom. V'Yalchol Yisrael V'Yalchol Yoshvei Tevel.
Amen.
281. Shabach ladon hakol, latet gedula gliotze breshit, shelo asanu kegaya aratzot, v'lo samanu kemishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu kecho hamonam, anachnu korim, umishtachavim umodim, Lifnei melech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shenu teshemer v'yosero tzumoshav yikara b'shman melosh. We all are. Okay, nekabel echad an Eloheinu lirot mehira v'tiferes. ותמלוך עליהם מהר עליהם ברד, כי המלכות שלך היא לעולם תמלוך בכבוד, ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו echad. The mourner's Kaddish is on 282. The mourners can rise, and I will lead you in saying the Kaddish slowly. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah v'yalama divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael v'agala uv'izman kari v'yimaru. Amen.
Amen. Yehei Shmei
Rabba.
Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yit hadar v'yit'aleh v'yit'halal shemei dekudsha v'richu. Le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata d'amiram d'alma v'yimaru. Amen.
Amen.
Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemayu V'Chayim Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Yimaru. Amen.
Amen.
Oseh Shalom B'Mromav Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Al Kol Yishrei Tevel V'Yimaru. Amen.
Amen.
That concludes the evening service.
Do we do the Omer?
Oh, whoops. No, we didn't.
I think it says page 63.
You know, I don't have that in front of me because I have this part of the Siddur. Jim, can you do the Omer counting? I don't have the book in front of me for that.
Jim, you're muted.
Jim, can you hear me?
He's muted. You're muted, Jim.
Unmute. Unmute yourself. Jim, unmute yourself. I don't know if he hears me.
He can't.
I mean, what day is it of the Omer? Is it going into the Sunday night was?
I think he's doing the sign.
You want me to,
What
should I
day?
get the, you want me to get the luach? Let me get a luach?
Yeah, does anyone know what day we're going into?
He said it, Jim,
What?
14. It's the 14th.
Going into the 14th?
Yeah.
You're getting.
Jim Morgan is going to call in and everyone in a second.
Wait a minute, I've got.
Arba'asar Yom LaOmer.
What is 14 in Hebrew? It's S.
Arba'asar.
I can say the prayer by heart. It's all right.
Okay.
Sorry. Let's say that again, Sherry.
Arba'asar.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sefirat haomer hayom yom
Arba'asar.
ba'asar hayom bayomer. Today is the 14th day of the Omer. Okay, that's the minimal prayer.
Okay. That fulfills the mitzvah.
Okay,
Great.
Yeshua.
I forget the Hebrew counting.
All right, am I back?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what is very strange. I'm going to switch back to the phone so people can hear me better.
So we're ready for a vote?
All right, I'm
I'm back. Amazingly. All right. I'm really not sure what happened there, but we won't worry about it. So thank you, Yesher Koach Lois. Very beautiful. And so I'm very, very happy that we are able to do this learning in memory of Ruth Anna. I'm going to I'll add a Yesher Koach, a virtual Yesher Koach also. There we go. So everyone who has a screen, pretty soon I will start sharing the texts. And as we've been doing, I would invite everyone to who has something they'd like to add to raise their hands. If you go to where it says participants, and you click on that, there is an option to raise a hand. There'll be a little blue hand that raises on my screen, and I will know that you want to say something, and I will stop and let you speak. If you are Jim Leffert, by the way, we have the most attractive view of your ceiling. So yeah, that's nicer. I like your face more than your ceiling lamp. And then if you are on a phone, feel free to raise your hand by hitting *9. If you hit *9, you will be able to raise your hand that way and say what you want to say. All right, so we'll learn for a little while, and then move on to the rest of our evening's activities. So I'm going to share now the screen with the texts from Pirkei Avot. All right, so can everyone see it? Who has a screen? Okay. Do I have a volunteer to read the first bit of it here?
I'll take it.
Great. You have to unmute yourself, Stephen. There you go.
Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakkai received the oral tradition from Hillel and Shammai. He used to say, if you have learned much Torah, do not claim credit for yourself, because for such a purpose were you created. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had 5 disciples, and they were these: Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, Rabbi Joshua ben Hananiah, Rabbi Hosea, the priest, Rabbi Shimon ben Netanyel, and Rabbi Eliezer ben Arach. Okay. Oops. He, Rabbi Yochanan, used to list their outstanding virtues. Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus is a plasterned cistern, which loses not a drop. Rabbi Joshua ben Hananiah, happy is the woman that gave birth to him. Rabbi Hosea, the priest, is a pious man. Rabbi Shimon ben Netanyel is one that fears sin. And Rabbi Eliezer ben Arach is like a spring that ever gushes forth. He, Rabbi Yochanan, used to say, if all the sages of Israel were all one scale of the balance, and Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus also with them, and Rabbi Eliezer ben Arach on the other side, he would outweigh them all.
Great, thank you. That's good for now. We'll take one at a time.
Okay,
all right, so go ahead.
I would just add that this is a interesting portion that you picked for us to study, in part because about 25 years ago, Ben Gold taught a class on Pirkei Avot.
Oh, really?
The class had about 5 or 6 members. It had Hillary and Ruth Putnam, Sherman Sass, Manny Morell, and myself.
Oh, I was there.
And
so was Irv.
Okay, that's 7. And the fact is that we got just about as far as this in Ben's teaching, because his view would be, oh, you don't know the name of one of these rabbis? And the next class had come in with extra readings and would be off on a tangent on talking about the other rabbis and who they really were. So this is
Right.
an interesting portion for you to have selected.
That's great. Yeah, no, there is a, for some reason when I was thinking about what to choose to teach today, this portion immediately came to mind. And I can't say that it, you know, that there was some, that I would be able to articulate what the reasons were, but maybe they will emerge in our learning. So we'll find out. So I first of all, I just love the modesty of this first piece, right? If you have learned much Torah, do not claim credit for yourself, because this is what you were there for. And actually, I think this is interesting, because I combed my emails because I remembered getting a Devar Torah from Ruth Anna at some point that I had really enjoyed when she delivered it in the congregation, and I reread it today, and it actually has to do with this. It has to do with being chosen to do something, and that very often it's you don't know why you were chosen to do a certain thing, how it came about that you ended up being the person who was responsible for this or that task in the world, but that it was your job to embrace it. And so this actually seems very consistent with Ruth Anna's Devar Torah. That was about the Midbar, wondering why the Levites had the honor of carrying around the Ark of the Covenant. So actually, this is coming up right away. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had five disciples, and I love how the five disciples all have distinct but somehow related qualities. So I guess the question I would ask is how do we understand these various qualities? What do they mean? You know, because some of them are a little bit obscure. So, for instance, Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, right? He is a plastered cistern which loses not a drop. Who wants to take who wants to reflect on what that might mean?
Perhaps he had an exceptional memory, so
Mm-hmm.
always would recall whatever he had been taught.
Right. That's what it's always seemed to me, right? That he has everything. He has a photograph. I guess maybe not photographic, because probably there weren't photographs back then. But a memory such that anything that he learns, right, is just in there. And it's an interesting question. It's in there, and he can recall it, or it's in there. You know, he knows it's in there, but he can't recall. Who knows? But anyway, so Rabbi Joshua ben Hananiah, happy is the woman who gave birth to him.
But I'm sorry to interrupt, but with Rabbi Eliezer, aren't they talking about his Torah studies though too? I mean,
Right. I would imagine that. Right. I would imagine that Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus is probably the guy that, you know, there's always one, right? You go to him and you say, you know that verse in Isaiah where it talks about, and he says, you know, oh yeah, it's chapter 12, verse 18. You know, the guy who's not me. Let's put it this way. I always stand in awe of these people that can remember everything like that. I can't. But yeah, I think that's exactly right. It has to do with this Torah study. So Yehoshua ben Hananiah, happy is the woman who gave birth to him.
But he's just an all-around nice guy.
Yeah, so this seems to be about personality, right? It seems to be about his character, right? More than his learning. I mean, I may be wrong, right? So, he's the rabbi you go to, when you've got a problem. Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, if you need to know, you need to remember a part of the Talmud. You have to find a, before there was Google and Safari, you needed to find a piece of the Talmud. You go to Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus. Rabbi Joshua, you go to him, when you've got an issue and you want to talk it through. All right. So Rabbi Shimon ben Netanel is one who fears sin. What about him?
Well, I don't think it's just that he fears sin, but he's makes him a righteous person. He's
Well, he's Yerei Chet, right?
Yeah.
He's Yerei Chet. He fears, or he's in awe. He's in awe of sin, right? He's worried about sinning.
No, but I think that really means that he's a righteous person. It's not just that he's a warrior.
I love it. All right, yeah. So he will avoid sin. All right, Maury, I see you have your hand up. I'm going to see if I can unmute. Can you unmute yourself there?
Yeah, I'm unmuted. But it's also that if the first three of them, if you have a question, Eliezer ben Hyrcanus will probably give you whatever the tradition is on your difficult question. Joshua ben Hanina will probably give you the answer, which is, of course, is within the tradition, but will take the one that probably has the most humane flow with it. And Shimon ben Netanel, the one who fears sin, unfortunately, will probably be the one who's most restricted.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. As you're talking, Maury, I'm thinking of sort of the of pastoral styles of various rabbis that I know. The one who will tell you, this is what the tradition says. Boom. The one who will say, well, we can find someplace in the tradition that to let you do to let things work for you. And then, the idea of this, it's not so much, actually, I'm sorry, I skipped Rabbi Yossi, I apologize. But Rabbi Shimon ben Netanel, right, is the one who's going to be focused on sin, and will not be afraid of telling you that you're sinning. So it's not his own sin that he's afraid of, right? He's worried about you sinning, which is, in my mind, let's just say I've never aspired to be that kind of rabbi. All right, so Rabbi Yossi, the priest, is a pious man. All right, he's a chassid. He's a pious guy. So in your taxonomy, Maury, where would he fit?
I'm not sure. It's almost that he would be most shy about giving an answer. Nice. that he's the most inward.
He's the most what?
Most inward, and would be the shyest about giving an answer to someone else.
Right. Actually, it's interesting when you're talking about that. I'm thinking that even Rabbi Shimon, right? Maybe his fear of sin. Maybe he's so afraid of giving the wrong answer, so afraid of leading the questioner into sin that he would be also in his own way reticent and unwilling to. That's who knows. All right, and then Rabbi Elazar ben Arach is like a spring that ever gathers force. All right, so who wants to take a crack at that one?
I'm happy to suggest that he is someone who's always coming up with new and creative ideas. Yeah,
he's the one. I always think of Elazar ben Arach as the one who, in a generation, is the one who is discovering new facets of Torah, right? Who's always pointing out the way that the way that previous generations were not able to understand certain questions. that the Torah raises, not because they didn't have insight, right, but just because it hasn't, that facet hadn't been uncovered yet, and he's the one who is able to uncover it. All right, so, and he says, right, Rabbi Yochanan says, if the sages of Israel are on one scale of the balance and Rabbi Eliezer Hyrcanus on the other scale, he would outweigh them all. Interesting, right? So what does Rabbi Yochanan really value in a disciple?
He values
He values
learning.
the transmission.
He values the transmission, right?
The
He values
transmission of
the
accurate
accurate,
information.
right? Which is interesting, right? That there's a, that there's this. I mean, and just to point out that he received the oral tradition from Hillel and Shammai, right? And so he's the one that's interested in very much making sure that the tradition continues appropriately. Now, on the other hand, Abba Shaul said in his name, meaning in Rabbi Yochanan's name, right? If all the sages of Israel were on one scale of the balance, and Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus also with them, and Rabbi Elazar ben Araf on the other scale, he would outweigh them all, right? So this is one of the things I love about Pirkei Avot, right? Because Rabbi Yochanan, right, is there's an argument. There's either you can see it as an argument within Rabbi Yochanan himself, right, or in the way that the tradition remembers Rabbi Yochanan, right? Because on one hand, right, we want the faithful transmission of what came before. On the other hand, we want to make sure that there's always new Torah being discovered, always new Torah, new ways of understanding the Torah to be constantly in.
Well, you could see, if I
process.
can just offer a suggestion
Please.
here, you could see Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai as such a pivotal figure, since he essentially, at a very important moment in the history of the people, founded an academy after the temple was destroyed and made a vonus vivendi with the Romans to allow rabbinic Judaism to emerge. And so the idea that he values the preservation of the received tradition at that moment, which is a very frightening moment in terms of the continuity of the tradition. And at the same time, he could also be seen as someone who values innovation and new interpretations. That both he's in the middle. He's the pivotal person,
right,
at that moment.
Right. I think what you're pointing at, Jim, is very important, right? Because it's that for Rabbi Yochanan, it's not at all an either or, right? It actually has to be a both, because without the temple, without Jerusalem, right, there needs to be an ever-flowing spring of new interpretations, of new ways of connecting with God now that the temple is gone, right? But that all of those new ways need to be have a foundation of the received tradition. So both are necessary, and it's interesting that the tradition says that, well, Yochanan says that it was Rabbi Elazar ben Hyrcanus who's important, and Abba Shaul in his name is said that we need new stuff as well. So anyway, Sherry, you wanted to talk?
No, it's just that it's such a weird layout of things, because what are these other guys? Chopped liver?
Apparently. Well, we're laughing, right? But the fact of the matter is that the way that Pirkei Avot presents these guys, right, is to sort of say that the great scholar of the received tradition, right, is on one hand the most important guy, and on the other hand, the great scholar who is able to be incredibly innovative and bring new stuff, right, is most important. The guy who is afraid of sin, and the guy who's really pious, and the guy who's a really welcoming and friendly person, who needs them?
Yeah, but why? I mean, they're obviously trying to make a point, but why discard them? Why, it's just the strangest setup. I always,
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't have an answer for you except for the fact that in a lot of circles it's still that way today, right? Go ahead, Stephen.
No, it's me, Lori.
Lori, great.
I was thinking of this in a way that I don't want to be political, but the way things are done now, the one that is in favor of tradition and keeping things the way they are and making sure that things are maintained is speaking to the base of the already religious. But if you want to grow your community, you have to be willing to look for new interpretations and allow new voices to be heard, even if they're a little off the path.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting about that, right, is that I don't think that there is a religious group that doesn't change, right? There are religious groups that pretend that nothing ever changes, right? But there's no religion that's exactly the same as it was, 100 years ago, right? It's just not possible because the world's not the same as it was. A good example would be, modern Orthodoxy. 20 years ago, if we talked about women holding positions of authority in synagogues, there would be, you'd be laughed off the, laughed out of the conversation. But now it's very clear, right, that feminism has completely changed Orthodox Judaism in all kinds of different ways, and will probably continue to do so. But it's still Orthodoxy, and that hasn't changed. All right, so go ahead, Susan. Susan, you need to unmute yourself.
I just had a question. Who's Abba Shaul?
Oh, that's a good question. This is unlike Rabbi Gold. I am not a master of keeping track of who all the rabbis are. Does anyone have an idea? Remember who Abba Shaul is? All right, I will try to figure that out and let you know. It's a good question. All right.
If you're looking for,
great. All right, so let's go ahead.
If you're looking for groups or the result of what happens when you don't change, you have the Shakers who don't exist anymore. There are none of them left.
Well, there's plenty of groups that don't exist anymore, right? It's not always their own decision, as it seemed to be with the Shakers. All right, so let's go to the next one. Do I have another volunteer to read the next Mishnah?
I can read it.
Great.
Can I read it in Hebrew
Can you
first?
see it?
Yeah, can I read it in Hebrew first and then in English? Is that or you?
It's kind of long for that, but if you want to, you can.
No, just read it.
I think let's just read it in English for the sake of time. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay. He, Rabbi Yochanan, said unto them, go forth and observe which is the right way to which a man should cleave. Rabbi Eliezer said, a good eye. Rabbi Joshua said, a good companion. Rabbi Yossi said, a good neighbor. Rabbi Shimon said, foresight. Rabbi Elazar said, a good heart. He, Rabban Yochanan, said to them, I prefer the words of Elazar ben Arach, for in his words, your words are included. He, Rabban Yochanan, said unto them, go forth and observe which is the evil way which a man should shun. Rabbi Eliezer said, an evil eye. Rabbi Joshua said, an evil companion. Rabbi Yossi said, an evil neighbor. Rabbi Shimon said, one who borrows and does not repay. For he that borrows from man is as one who borrows from God, blessed be he. As it is said, The wicked borrow and do not repay, but the righteous deal graciously and give. Rabbi Elazar said, an evil heart. He, Rabban Yochanan, said to them, I prefer the words of Elazar ben Arach, for in his words, your words are included.
All right. All right, so here we see the tradition of Abba Shaul in that that Elazar ben Arach is the one who gets the most kudos because his words seem somehow to include all of the other answers. All right, so let's go. I think what we'll do is, again, in the interest of time, because we don't have that much longer, let's look at the both sides of the poll for the 5 rabbis. So Rabbi Eliezer says, what should you look for? A good eye, right? You should have a good eye. And he says you should avoid an evil eye. Okay, so what are we getting at here? A good eye and an evil eye.
I'd say looking for the good in people and not pointing out their flaws and their faults.
Yeah, that's how I've always understood it, and I think I actually think it's a very powerful way of being in the world if you can do it, right? It's sort of the idea of always trying to assume good intentions on the part of people.
And you may actually inspire them to be better than they would have been otherwise.
Yes, right. And always assuming that someone is trying to do their best, right? It can be very, very difficult if you're really frustrated with what they're doing, but it can pay great dividends. All right, so Rabbi Yehoshua said a good companion is what you should try to be a good companion, or you should look for good companions. And Rabbi Yehoshua says also that you should shun an evil companion. Okay, so this is sort of like what parents hope for their children, right? That they have good friends and not negative friends. So all right, so how do we understand that?
Well, obviously, you don't want your children, but we are influenced by the people that we associate with.
Yeah.
And if you stay with people who have right ideas or a good inclination in terms of their behavior, it'll affect you, and the vice versa.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Good. All right. Any other thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, is it that by saying a good companion, are you looking to others, or are you looking at the person, that the person should be a good companion to other people?
Yeah, that is an interesting question that I have to say that when I was reading it today, when I was reading it right now, I realized that I didn't actually really think of that before, right? Is it that you want to be a good companion, or do you want to make sure you surround yourself with good companions? And it's probably both. Go ahead.
Well, it's which is the right way to which a man should cleave. So it's really, how is the man acting? And I think in that way, is the man is a good companion to others.
Right. I mean, I can see an argument for both ways, but I take your point. All right, and so Rabbi Yosef says, who cares about friends, right? You have to be a good neighbor, right? So even people who aren't your friends, even people who aren't your family or friends, you have to be a good neighbor, right? And you should seek out. I mean, again, I kind of agree with Susan, but alternatively, you could say you need to seek out good neighbors. You need to live in a neighborhood of good people. You have to search out a community that will lead you to be a good person, right? Because knowing that the community you keep makes a big difference. All right. So he is. So actually, you could kind of say, in a way, right, that it's you could even I don't even know. You could even say that these sort of start very close to you, right? Starting with sort of with your own body. We talked about the good eye and the evil eye as being about other people, but it's possible, right, that you're really worried about how you react to other people, right? In the sense the emphasis being on you. Right? You don't want to be someone who walks around with an evil eye, putting curses on people. And then it goes out a little bit further, right? You want to be a good friend. So it's that sort of circle, the small circle. And then the neighbor, it's a little bit of a bigger circle, right? But then Rabbi Shimon says you want foresight, which I have to say I don't remember this being the translation from other versions of this that I've seen. So what does Ro'eh? He says Haro'eh et Hanolad. I'm not remembering this one. So foresight, seeing what's going to happen in the future.
Can I
don't know.
Can I say something?
Please.
I've got it.
Is Rabbi Shimon is the one who is afraid of sin, isn't he?
Yeah.
So each of these,
I believe so, yeah.
Each of these attributes that they think are most central say something about their own character as Rabbi Yohanan has described it. So
yeah.
The man who is afraid of sin is the man who thinks the most important quality is foresight. And that makes perfect sense, really.
Right. And it also makes sense, right, that he's the one who says you should never borrow and not repay, right? Because it's only wicked people who borrow and don't repay.
That's a sin to do that, right?
Yeah, right. It's a sin, exactly. Right. That makes sense. That makes sense, and probably we could do something similar along the lines with right, because Rabbi Yehoshua, he's the one whose mom is so happy that she had me, and he's about being a good friend, right?
And Rabbi Yossi is a good priest, and he sees the importance of the good neighbor. So you can see how.
Right. Great. And then finally, Elazar ben Arach is the one who sort of, he's the one who says, a good heart, right? A lev tov, right? A good heart, and that sort of includes and for Rabbi Yochanan, that kind of includes all of these qualities together. And a lev ra, right? A heart that's evil, right? Is that how they put it? A wicked heart, I think. Yeah, an evil heart, right? That is for Rabbi Yochanan. That includes all of them. Now, do you agree with Rabbi Yochanan? What do you think of Rabbi Yochanan's take on it? Susan, you want to say something?
Unmute.
Yeah, Susan, you're still muted.
Yeah.
There you
go. The fact that he's saying that the good heart includes everything else, to me, says that companion is what kind of companion you are. And neighbor means what kind of neighbor you are, rather than how the people are that surround you.
Right. Although, I think, though, I do think that there is a kind of, is the word reflexive? Meaning that meaning that the kind of person you are will actually have a big effect on the kind of people that are around you, and that there's a circular, there's a circular effect. It's not just a one-way thing.
Can I add something on that?
Please, Jim. Yeah, please, Jim. Yeah.
It says at the beginning a good eye, and here it says a good heart, and the good heart somehow wins out as the most important one. And I think that in those days, the heart was seen as the location where thought and understanding occurs.
Right.
It's basically what we consider the brain today.
The mind.
And
right.
Interestingly, you have here the primacy of interior cognition over observation. In other words, what we see with our eye and what we do in our behavior towards others often is influenced by the interpretations that we come up with, the cognitive schemas that we project onto what we see. And it's interesting also that in the Shema, in the book of Deuteronomy and in our prayer book, it says it actually in the book of Numbers, but in the Shema, it says, Lo taturu acharei levavchem ve'acharei einechem. It says, don't stray after your heart and after your eyes. And it mentions the heart first there, because it seems to me that it's making the point that the way we understand things is what actually influences what we see and what we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I do think that it is the seat of cognition, but I think that it's also seen as the seat of emotion. Emotion and cognition, I think, we're not necessarily completely separable, as I don't think they are obviously today. Miriam, you wanted to say something?
Well, we've gotten a little beyond the point that I indicated, but on the question of foresight, I'm looking at a different translation, and it translates it as foresight, but then it has a footnote that says that literally it means one who sees the consequences of his deeds. Mm-hmm.
So that would really back up what Susan was saying, that the fear of sin, right, and being aware that if you do something, you could lead yourself into a bad situation.
Well, I guess so. I mean, Ro'eh et hanolad, is that nolad as in what he's giving birth to, what he's causing?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, go ahead. Do you want to say more, Miriam?
I don't know. It seems to me that one is pretty fundamental. How often does a well-intentioned person blunder into something? It may be just
right.
Said it wrong and you've hurt someone's feelings, or it may be something that where in the real world you've stirred up something that's beyond anything you imagined or could control.
Right. I mean, it's again, not to get political, but it's hard not to imagine that no one in the Bush administration imagined that the thing in Iraq would go the way that it did. Just to take one example. Sherry.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, but isn't that also the basis for a lot of legal decisions in the Talmud is what is the intention and in law and generally? And so,
of course.
So
right.
Lev Tov is really the underlying motive for legal adjudication.
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting, right, that the intention definitely does matter, right? But actions also matter. So, having good intentions is great, but we know where the how the road to hell is paved, right? So I don't think it's different in the Talmud.
It's not the only criteria, but it's certainly
exactly
an important.
But Lev Tov would both include the intention and the ability to see the consequences. If it's really
exactly,
if it's your brain, it's not merely your impulses which are part of your brain, your brain, but it's being able to get to the next step with it.
Right. I think that's a really good way of putting it, right? That I think in the Bible and then for the Talmud, right, head and heart are not necessarily separable, right? You've got to have control of what for us is both of them, but I think there it's one. It's one. All right. So I think this is a good place to pause, and I'll just ask people for any last thoughts, any last objections, questions besides who the heck is Abba Shaul, which is a good question.
Well, not exactly a question, but just a reflection that Ruth Anna, I think, was someone who, by her example, inspired other people to be better than they might have been without her.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes, I can agree. I can agree with that from my own personal experience.
I think she embodied the live too.
Yes.
And at the same time, she saw the best in people. She was not above pointing out privately things that she found objectionable, but she always found something good.
And then you had to live up to that image of yourself, which, maybe you wouldn't have done without her.
Right.
I remember when I first joined the Minyan, I went to the Hanukkah, we had Hanukkah parties then. I went at Hillel, and I went to the Hanukkah party with Gail, and we really, didn't really know people very well. And I remember we sat down by ourselves at a table, and that Ruth Anna was the one person who came over and sat with us and really, sat with us for quite a while, talking with us and telling us about herself.
I remember at that Pirkei Avot class that Stephen mentioned, Ruth Anna asking one of the other members of the class, who I won't identify at the moment, to sponsor her on the Walk for Hunger. And the reply was, but I've already sponsored this one and this other, a sizable commitment, shall we say. And she just looked and said, so? Everybody in the room had to pony up because, after all,
that's a great response. Erica or Lois, would you like to chime in with any? Yeah, go ahead, Erica. You have to unmute yourself. Yeah, there we go.
Okay, I think I should be good. I was just thinking, and this is really wonderful to be with all of you and obviously learn and honor my mother this way. But right from the outset, the first part of the reading says he used to say, if you learned much Torah, do not claim credit for yourself, because for such a purpose were you created. And that really epitomizes what my mother was about. She was always so, learned and giving and force, many of the words that have been used, but one of the most humble, understated people I know. So I just thought of that. And she also was very incredibly bound by purpose, throughout her life, whether it was social justice, the way she was raised. You just see a need and you fill it. So it really spoke to me, this particular passage and the discourse. Thanks for having me.
So glad you were with us.
Miss you.
Yeah, where do I go?
Ari wants to say
Where do I
something.
go?
Right.
Okay, great.
Ari.
Erev Tov. So what I wanted to say, good evening, Arim, is that what I didn't know Ruth Anna as long as probably most of you people did, but my favorite memory of her, and was so, I'd say, indicative of her, was her love for the Shabbat meals. Even when she was very sick, I could see her smile. I could see her love it when Lois made Kiddush.
Yeah.
And just enjoyed having whoever was there at her house celebrate Shabbat. And for someone in her very sick condition to feel like that gave me inspiration every single time.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Great. It's wonderful.
right up to the end. Yeah.
Yeah, the dinners that were crafted the last year and a half, the rotating list of Shabbat dinners, I just felt that it not only brought us closer to Ruth Anna, but it was probably the holiest I ever felt in being able to participate in something of a community. Because just watching as she struggled, the joy that Ruth Anna got out of us being together.
Mhm.
There was a line in the reading tonight, and I keep thinking, I mean, there's a lot I could say about her, but I just want to say she was a force of nature.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was an ever flowing spring, I would say.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I'm gonna go, but I'll leave the meeting open in case you want to socialize some more over Zoom. You know, Ruth Anna's memory is definitely for a blessing, and she'll continue to be bound up in the bonds of the lives of this congregation and her family, of course. And so, thank you all for being part of this this evening. And I look forward to seeing you all. I'm not going to be at Shul on Saturday, so I won't see you there. But I will see you. I'll see you soon after. Sunday night we have something, right? Sherry, do you want to?
Yes, yes. We're going to have Schmooze and Learn. And we're going to have Abby Gilman is going to give a talk on the name of God and difficulties in biblical translation. Starting, we're going to have Mariv at 7 and Schmooze and Learn at 7:30. It should be great.
Abby Gilman
Awesome. Abby is great. Yeah.
Is a one-time member of Arminian who is a professor of Jewish studies at Boston University.
So don't miss
Bye,
it.
Erica. Goodbye, Erica. It's good to see you.
Good night, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Good
night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Well,
Bye, Erica.
bye-bye.
Bye, Lori and Steve.
Okay.